For over 2,000 years, the name Cleopatra has conjured images of a legendary seductress, a woman whose beauty alone toppled empires and brought the most powerful men in Rome to their knees. We see her through the lens of Hollywood and Shakespeare, a tragic figure with an asp at her breast. But behind this enduring femme fatale caricature lies a far more complex and formidable historical reality. This was a woman who was not just a queen, but a polyglot scholar, a shrewd economic administrator, and a master of religious theater. She was the last active ruler of the Ptolemaic kingdom, navigating a world where the rising tide of Rome threatened to swallow everything she loved. Today, we peel back the layers of Roman propaganda and ancient myth to reveal the true story of Cleopatra VII. We begin not with her death, but with the immense civilization she fought to save, a place where the sun set over the Giza pyramids just as a new era of global power was dawning. To understand Cleopatra, one must first understand her bloodline. She was not ethnically Egyptian, but a Macedonian Greek, a descendant of Ptolemy I, one of Alexander the Great's most trusted generals. For nearly 300 years, the Ptolemies had ruled Egypt as a foreign elite, speaking Greek and maintaining their Hellenistic culture. However, Cleopatra was different. Growing up in the intellectual heart of the ancient world, the city of Alexandria, she was surrounded by the greatest minds of her age. The Library of Alexandria was her classroom, a sprawling complex of knowledge where millions of scrolls were meticulously maintained. It was here that she developed her legendary intellect. She was likely the only member of her dynasty to bother learning the Egyptian language, a strategic move that allowed her to communicate directly with her subjects. Beyond Egyptian and Greek, she was reportedly fluent in at least 7 other languages, including Hebrew, Aramaic, and Latin. This linguistic prowess wasn't just for show. It was a powerful tool for diplomacy. She understood that power in the Mediterranean was as much about communication as it was about coin and conquest. Her education instilled in her a deep appreciation for the opulence of the palace and the weight of the crown, preparing her for the brutal power struggles that defined the Ptolemaic court. Cleopatra's ascent was forged in the fires of civil war. Forced into exile by her younger brother Ptolemy XIII, she realized that to reclaim her throne she needed a Roman ally. When Julius Caesar arrived in Alexandria in pursuit of his rival Pompey, Cleopatra saw her moment. The famous story tells of her being smuggled into Caesar's presence inside a rolled-up carpet, a dramatic gesture that highlighted her daring and creativity. Caesar, the most powerful man in Rome, was captivated not just by her presence, but by her sharp political mind. Their alliance was both personal and profoundly strategic. Caesar provided the military might to defeat her brother's forces, while Cleopatra offered Caesar the immense wealth of Egypt to fund his own ambitions in Rome. This was a partnership of equals that resulted in the birth of a son, Caesarion, whom she hoped would one day bridge the worlds of the Nile and the Tiber. However, the optics of an Egyptian queen influencing a Roman leader caused ripples of fear and anger back in the Roman Senate. To the Stoic Romans, she represented an exotic, dangerous influence. When Caesar was assassinated on the Ides of March, Cleopatra's world was thrown into chaos. She had to flee Rome and return to Alexandria, knowing that the fragile stability she had built was now under threat from Caesar's successors who were hungry for power. Back in Egypt, Cleopatra proved she was more than just a survivor. She was a master of governance. She worked tirelessly to stabilize an economy plagued by famine and debt. Unlike her predecessors, she personally managed the royal granaries and ensured the distribution of food during low Nile floods. Her religious strategy was equally brilliant. She aligned herself with the goddess Isis, the mother figure of the Egyptian pantheon. By portraying herself as the new Isis, she transcended her Greek roots and became a living deity to the Egyptian people. This wasn't merely vanity, it was a calculated method of cementing her legitimacy. In the grand temples of Alexandria and across the banks of the Nile, she appeared in elaborate ceremonies, draped in gold and wearing the traditional symbols of divinity. She understood that in the ancient world, the boundaries between religion and politics were non-existent. By controlling the narrative of her own divinity, she unified a diverse population and projected an image of absolute, unquestionable authority. Her court became a hub of culture and wealth once again, where the finest jewelry was crafted and the grandest architectural projects were planned. She was not just a queen of a territory, she was the architect of a national identity, ensuring that Egypt remained the wealthiest and most sophisticated kingdom in the eastern Mediterranean, even as Rome's internal conflicts threatened to spill over its borders. The next chapter of Cleopatra's life began with the arrival of Mark Antony, one of the 3 men ruling Rome after Caesar's death. Their meeting at Tarsus was a masterclass in psychological warfare. She arrived on a magnificent barge with silver oars and purple sails, scented with exotic perfumes, presenting herself as Aphrodite meeting Dionysus. Antony, a man of appetite and military bravado, was instantly enthralled. But beneath the romance was a cold, hard geopolitical reality. Antony needed Egypt's resources for his campaign against the Parthians, and Cleopatra needed Antony's legions to protect her kingdom and expand its borders. Together they formed a power couple that challenged the authority of Octavian, Caesar's heir, in Rome. They lived in opulence in Alexandria, forming the Society of Inimitable Livers, but the world was moving toward a final confrontation. Octavian launched a massive propaganda campaign, painting Antony as a man who had lost his Roman virtue to an Egyptian witch. This conflict culminated in the Battle of Actium in 31 BC, a massive naval engagement off the coast of Greece. It was a chaotic clash of wooden galleys and desperate men. Cleopatra and Antony's forces were defeated, and as they fled back to Alexandria, the Mediterranean sun began to set on the Ptolemaic era. The Roman Republic was dying, and in its place, an empire was being born under Octavian, who would stop at nothing to eliminate the last of the pharaohs. As Octavian's forces closed in on Alexandria, Cleopatra faced the inevitable. Antony, believing his queen was already dead, took his own life. Cleopatra, ever the pragmatist and master of her own image, chose to die on her own terms rather than be paraded through the streets of Rome in Octavian's triumph. The exact method of her suicide remains a mystery. Was it the bite of an asp, or a concealed toxic ointment? Regardless of the means, her end was as dramatic as her life. She died in her royal mausoleum, surrounded by her faithful handmaids, dressed in her full pharaonic regalia. With her death, the 3,000-year history of the pharaohs came to an end, and Egypt was formally absorbed into the Roman Empire as Octavian's personal province. The wealth of the Nile now flowed into Roman coffers, fueling the rise of Augustus as the first emperor. The queen who had fought so hard for her independence was now a ghost of history, her legacy immediately targeted by Roman historians who sought to diminish her intellect and focus solely on her sexuality. Yet, the foundations she laid and the cultural impact of her reign ensured that the world would never truly forget her name, even if they forgot the woman behind the crown. Today, we remember Cleopatra, not as the caricature Rome created, but as a brilliant bridge between 2 worlds. She was a woman who mastered the arts of the past to protect the future of her people. Her story is a testament to the power of intellect over brute force, and her name remains synonymous with the grandeur of an ancient world that refused to go quietly into the night. She was the last of the pharaohs, a queen whose true beauty was her mind, and whose real empire was the enduring legacy of Alexandria. As we look upon the ruins of the world she once ruled, we see the echoes of a woman who dared to stand against the tide of history, leaving a mark on our collective imagination that 2,000 years of time could never erase.